The VP9SK versus the Glock 26. Let's check it out. Today we're taking a look at two very reputable companies, one from Austria, one in Germany. And these guns have been proven in a lot of areas. Of course, the VP9SK is a brand new offering, but still just a smaller version of the standard VP9. The Glock 26 has been around since, I believe, 1994, and this has just been an excellent concealed carry, one of my main concealed carries. Comparison videos are always very popular because a lot of guys are trying to compare two different type pistols and they're really stumped. One of the things that's kind of a benchmark that I like to say is the Glock. There's so many of these sold, they've been around for so long, everybody kind of has at least a familiarity with Glock. And those usually are my most popular as far as comparison. We're looking at, of course, the HK VP9, and it's the new SK. It's a subcompact version of the standard VP9. One of the things that a lot of companies try to do is to get down to the size of the Glock 26. And so we're going to kind of take a look at some of the pros, cons. Both of them have some pros, both have cons. So this isn't going to be just a cut and dried, this is the one you should pick. Of course, first thing we're going to do is make sure the guns are unloaded. Then we hit our magazine release, which is right here on the frame. And then we're going to check the chamber, and the Glock 26 is empty. On the VP9, the magazine release is right here. It's a paddle, and you can pop it, bring out your magazine, check to make sure the gun is empty. So the first feature that's different between these two is the magazine release, and it's a big one. A lot of people either love it or hate it. I've been used to this type mag release for years. You know, it's intuitive, I know where it is, but one of the things I have to adjust my grip, which I don't really like. I have medium-sized hands, and it just getting around to that and popping that out is just a little bit different. With the VP9, you would have to adjust your grip to hit it with your thumb, but with your trigger finger right here, you can pop it and it hits it right out. So I'm becoming more and more of a fan of these type magazine releases. Also, it's already ambidextrous, so you can go either way. It makes it really nice. A lot of times guys will get a little bit more extended, and I know with the Gen 4 Glocks, they're a little bit larger, which definitely helps. But that's one of the big things about these two pistols right up front. If you don't like the paddle design, then, you know, the HK, that's all they offer. And of course, with the Glock, this is all they offer. Now, we are looking at the Gen 3 Glock, so there's a little bit of difference, and I'm going to kind of bring in some of the features of the Gen 4 that might kind of compare a little closer to the VP9SK. One of the big things, too, about the two pistols is the grip. Now, straight up, the grip on the Glock is just thicker. It's thicker in this area. Here on the Glock, we have 2 1/4 inches in thickness. Here with the VP9, you can see quite a bit of difference. We're actually getting down to just under 2 inches at 1.75. So it's 1 3/4 inches on the VP9. It's 2 1/4 inches on the Glock. So that's a 1/2 inch of difference, which definitely translates into a different feel. Now, I'm not saying that that's bad or good. It's just according to what your hand size is. If you have larger hands, this may seem kind of thin and small to you. But with the Glock, it's definitely thicker, and it's something to consider. HK has side panels that you can replace, but it also has these back panels. In fact, there are 3 different back straps and 3 separate pairs of side panels that you can go with thin, thicker, and it really kind of customizes the grip. But even with the full larger size, it's not as thick in this area as it is on the Glock. The texturing of the grip is different. Here you can see the Glock texturing here, and then of course this is again much more aggressive, and then this is also at the front, and then you have your finger grooves. With the VP9 you have almost like squiggly lines. It's more aggressive. You have your finger grooves, but it's the same pattern all the way through. Now with your standard Gen 4 you have these small pyramids, and it is a much better aggressive feel to it. You have your finger grooves here. And of course the back straps can be replaced on the Gen 4s. So even though this is a Model 17, on the 26 they've made it to where you can also replace the back straps. So that brings the comparison in a lot closer. If you're going with the Gen 3, you're going with a lot less aggressive pattern here. And then if you go with the Gen 4, you have the small pyramids that give it more aggressiveness. So this, to me, the VP9 is an in-between between those two. Now to get a size comparison also with the silhouette, and we've got it fully silhouetted from the top of the slide to the top of the slide, you can see that the VP9 does hang out just a little bit here at the bottom. And it's just about 3/8 of an inch. So you've got some extension right here. With the slides back to back, you have a slight difference. Now the barrel protrudes from on the Glock 26 just a little bit. We probably have about 1/4 of an inch that sticks out, not quite 1/4 of an inch here. So while we have our sight radius and our slides are really close, there's a little bit of difference, 1/4 inch down here at the bottom. You know, guys, sometimes that seems very incremental, but when you're carrying a firearm every day, those things can add up. And so, you know, that's just something to consider. Now we're going to look at total width. And I'm going to go from actually the widest point on the Glock, which is funny, but it's actually the frame. The frame is actually a little wider. And so here we're getting 1.15 inches. Here with the VP9, we're getting 1.4 inches. So the front part here, and mainly because of the frame itself, it's about 1/10 of an inch difference back here with the slide stop and then these slide stops. You got a little thinner at the front, you got a little thicker at the back, but honestly guys, this is really pretty close. Now the Glock 26 weighs 22 ounces according to my scale. With the VP9SK, it weighs 23 ounces, so there's just an ounce difference between the two. Now one thing that I want to cover specifically is the trigger, and with the VP9 and with the Glock. First we're going to make sure the gun is unloaded, the magazine is removed. Here we have some take up, it's really smooth right here, and then we come up on a wall, and then we have a nice crisp snap. There's a little bit of stacking beforehand. Here we're going to get a better look, smooth, little bit of resistance, and then a nice crisp snap. Reset right there. If you'll notice, the trigger on the VP9 after it's been fired comes right back out. Here on the Glock, gun's empty, no magazine. We pull it in, not too bad right there. A little bit of creep when we get close, pressure, and then it pops. It's more of a mushy feel. I'm so used to shooting these guns though that it doesn't really bother me, but definitely it has kind of a mushy feel to it. And the VP9 trigger is definitely a superior trigger. There are some things you can do to the Glock trigger. You can do a polish job, you can actually change out the disconnector, and that's one of the great things about the Glock is they're so popular. There's so many different aftermarket parts and accessories. We're going to check trigger pull weight with the Lyman trigger gauge. £5 pounds, 10 ounces. Here with the Glock, 5.6 pounds, and that's about right. We're getting a little bit less in trigger pull weight, but a lot more in crispness of the trigger with the SK. Now a couple of things that are very apparent are the front slide serrations on the VP9, whereas the Glock does not have it. We have the straight serrations here. We have these that are a little deeper, and I think that really the VP9 has better slide serrations. They're just a little bit more aggressive and grippy than your Glock, but one of the big points are these cocking ears or these cocking supports. And this really allows you to get a hold of this, and even with weak hand strength, be able to grab that. It makes it a lot easier for women to grab. One of the things, because this is somewhat slick, is you've got to really pinch right here to maintain your grip. With here, you don't have to as much, just a good firm. So it's definitely easier with the VP9 and with the cocking serrations. Another thing too is you have an accessory rail, which is a 1913 Picatinny rail on the front of your VP9. But this is a plus and a minus at the same time. If you want to carry an accessory rail or a light or laser, then this is great. If you don't, it's a little better to have just the smooth front, especially for a concealed carry. As far as the finished material on the slides, the Glock has traditionally had what they call the tenifer finish, but they've gone away from that because of some of the processes. It's still a very strong finish that actually impregnates the metal and actually turns it to this color, makes it very strong. As far as the VP9, it is a nitro carburized finish. It's what HK calls their hostile environment finish. It has a little bit more of a matte finish than the Glock, which has a little bit of a sheen. Two different processes, but same effect. Okay, here we have the 3-dot sights. The sights are metal, and then of course the front. These are luminescent. They glow in the dark, but they're not tritium. HK does offer tritium inserts. Here are your standard Glock sights, and then we have a front dot at the front, and then we have the framed in rear. These are polymer, so to me the advantage goes to HK, but of course there's a lot of different options you can get with these. One feature that the VP9SK has is a cock striker indicator. If it's in red, that means that the striker is cocked. It doesn't mean that it's loaded. Once we pull the trigger, it disappears. With the Glock, there's no indication. Both come with 2 magazines, 10 rounds each. This is an aftermarket finger grip, but the VP9SK comes with one of the magazines with a finger grip on the magazine. These are steel. They're extremely well made. The standard P30 or VP9 magazines will fit in the SK. With the Glock, these are polymer mags. This was an extra piece. They typically just have the flat base plate. Now this is an aftermarket base plate, but the standard is just a polymer base plate. And the Glock 26 takes the model 1917 Glock mags as well, and the 33 round mags. I want to give big thanks to Freedom Munitions for sponsoring the ammo, and they do give a 5% discount to Sootch viewers using Sootch00 at checkout. And this is good shooting stuff. I've shot thousands of rounds of this Freedom Munitions, and it's just good ammo. Now down here at the range, of course, both guns perform flawlessly. I know a lot of times down in the comments people kind of laugh at that, but guys, I'm telling you, if you're having problems with your pistol, there's something wrong. It's not normal. These two guns, of course, are excellent firearms with Glock, HK. They have a long proven track record used by military and police all over the world. And so it's no surprise. With the VP9 though, you know, because it is a brand new gun, a lot of times things can happen, little hiccups, but I haven't had any. With the first review, which I shot about 500 rounds, and now we only shot about 100 rounds, mainly just to show you the two. The handling of these two firearms, honestly, is totally different. The very ergonomic, thinner grip, I'm not saying it's necessarily a plus or a minus. I think it has everything to do with how it fits your hand. I put the smaller back strap on here, and it was definitely even smaller, and which before, even with the medium, it was smaller. So it really had a very solid feel. I felt like when I grabbed it, it was a lot smaller than the Glock 26. It's a lot thicker right in this area. But one of the things that was a plus really for the Glock is that while the VP9 was more ergonomic, the Glock seemed to be less top heavy. seem to be a little more pointable at first. With the VP9SK, you know, there's a little more metal going here. And then of course with the accessory rail on the front, and that's polymer, but still it does add a little bit to the weight. But really the handling, the VP9SK is very pointable. I don't want to kind of lead you into that. But there's definitely a difference between the two that's, you know, it's going to relate to the individual shooter. I've been shooting the Glock 26 and been carrying it as my main carry for a number of years. So the familiarity does play a part. But if you've never really had a lot of experience with the Glock, you're going to find that the VP9 is definitely more ergonomic. It fits in that, it just kind of molds to the hand. To me, it gives you a little more confidence when you're pulling it out. Whereas with the Glock, with it being a little bit thick right in this area, you know, it feels thicker. It doesn't feel like you have quite as much control. And then with the drop in the grip, you know, you're kind of hanging your pinky off just a little bit. That definitely makes a difference. With the VP9, you're getting just a little bit more, to me, on the magazine, but they're pretty close to size as far as in this area. And really the slide, it looks longer, but because the barrel protrudes, you're getting a little bit more with the Glock 26. Now with the controls, of course, the VP9 does have just a little bit of protrusion right here with the length, and then of course the Glock has this very small place. So it's a very minimal slide, but the VP9 does pretty good. And I should say VP9SK, but I'm going to probably say VP9 a lot. You'll know what I'm talking about. Here on the other side, of course, you've got your slide release that comes out, but it's very close to the frame and very hard to notice. One thing though that I did notice, and I know a lot of guys hate the magazine release on the trigger, these paddle magazine releases. This has been really popular in Europe. One of the things though that I do want to say, I begin to really love these type magazine releases. I think the big thing is a training issue. I will have to say, guys, though, that trigger pull is definitely a huge plus with the VP9SK. Down here at the range, getting follow-up shot, getting that reset was really quick. The crispness of the snap. Now this Glock trigger has been just fired so much that it's a pretty smooth trigger. But even then, there's that little bit of sponge when you come back to hit it. With the VP9, it's much crisper, just like we've shown earlier on the tabletop. One other thing though that I really like about the VP9 is these cocking levers, and this really makes a huge difference. I mean, I can barely grab here and I can pull that back. Here with the Glock, I have to really pinch down to get it. Now, it's not undoable, it's not a major deal breaker, but I just really like these cocking ears that I didn't really think I would like originally. As far as the grip, now this is the Gen 3, so the Gen 4 will have a little more texturing, but the grip is definitely superior with the VP9. With the finger rest inserted, these handle like full-size guns. Just to be honest with you, the guns, they just really fit in the hand. You get that pinky wrapped around it. Because of the dual recoil springs in both guns, it just really helps to mitigate recoil. So, you know, even though these are smaller guns, I remember the first time I took out my Glock 26, first time I bought it, went out to shoot it, and I really expected it to jump a lot more than my Glock 19 or my Glock 17. And I was just shocked at how easy it was to control. And all that had to do with the double recoil spring that helped to mitigate the recoil. With both of these pistols, especially with the finger groove, it does shoot like a full-size gun. But with the standard magazines, you definitely feel like you have a subcompact in your hand, even though they still, again, shoot very well. And as always, our music's provided by shootstill.com. Now, well, let's disassemble. We remove the magazine, check to make sure the gun is unloaded, pull the trigger, pull back 1/8 of an inch, and then pull on these tabs right here, and the slide comes right off. Dual recoil spring, got our barrel, and slide. And that's all you need to do to field strip. With the VP9, drop your magazine, make sure the gun is unloaded. You do not have to pull the trigger to disassemble. Go ahead and bring it back and put the slide release on, and then drop your takedown lever. As we drop it, we can push that lever forward, and this comes right off. So you don't have to pull the trigger to get this off. We have a dual recoil spring and guide rod, and we have our barrel system. and we have our slide. One thing that I will note is that the slide rails on the VP9 are considerably thicker than they are on the Glock. And you can see right here, it's much beefier, and that also translates toward the back. The VP9 has a much heavier slide rail. Now here is the locking block on the VP9SK, much larger than your standard locking block on the Glock. And then here's a look just at the rear, and of course some of the differences there, and they are considerable, and yet they're both striker fire. And here we have the Glock with the striker here, the striker on the VP9's here, but then you see a little bit of a difference, and this I'm sure is the firing pin safety up front here. Both are in Browning inspired linkless design barrels. HK on the right, Glock on the left. They're both polygonal barrels. The VP9SK, this is cannon grade steel, so it's pretty strong, but obviously Glock has a fine reputation for durability. The VP9SK recoil system, and then we have the Glock recoil system. Now as far as price goes, there's the retail price, but then there's the street price. I'm just going to give you kind of an idea of what I found as far as just doing some research. The Gen 3s are running about $509, around the $500 range. The Gen 4s are running about $545. There's about a $35 difference between the two, and that's where you're finding it, where you're gonna, you can look it up yourself, maybe go to your local gun shop. When it comes to the VP9, they're running about $515, was pretty much a very reasonable price for these guns. I know that the SKs though right now, because they're brand new, are commanding that kind of a high inflated price. So if you're really looking for one, I would probably wait just a little while, unless you just can't. That is a very reasonable price for an H&K for one thing, but the Glocks have really held their value well, and for good reason. Both are highly reputable firearms. They both are 10-in-1. They're both striker fire. They come from a long tradition. Either choice would be good. The biggest thing is to put it in your hand, feel the controls, and make your decision. A lot of guys are going to make a decision toward the Glock just because of the long track record with this model. With the VP9SK, of course, it's new, but again, the VP9 has come out pretty strong, and then of course with HK quality. So go to the gun shop, put them both in your hands, check them out, check the controls, and that'll help you to decide which one's best for you. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. I love that dog. I love that dog. I want to go pet that dog. I want to pet him. And then of course we have a little bit more texturing here. It doesn't mean the chamber's loaded, it just means the cocker's striked. Oh, no, the cocker's striked. Do y'all have a striker cocked? You go to the range, or you go. So if you're looking for that concealed carry between the Glock 26 or the SK, HK, VP. This makes me feel like Yosemite Sam. Woo! Ooh, where's that darn rabbit?